right? Because I can make you write my name. Right? So you don't know that you are being controlled in this way, but I can control you. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so I was able to control Casey's finger movement as long as Casey kept controlling the relationship between our fingers, right? And there's one more thing I should have said. Okay, so now, again, as long as you're controlling for that, I can control you. But how about just forgetting about keeping your finger in your mind? I can't control it anymore. I can't control your finger unless you control the relationship with my finger. In other words, I can't control you unless you're in control of something else. Great, thank you. So we are controllable to the extent that we are controlling things. I think the Buddhists kind of caught on to this. Your wanting makes you controllable, right? To the extent that you want stuff, you can be manipulated. That's what advertisers depend on. That's what a lot of things depend on. So, to the extent that people want to be nasty and control you, they can, to the extent that they can identify things you want, perceptions you want to control, and then they can become a disturbance to that thing, so that the only way you can get what you want is to act in opposition to my disturbance. And acting in opposition to my disturbance is what I want. Okay? I'll just say that another thing about people that, as far as controlling their behavior, people don't like to think of themselves as being controllable. And in fact, they're not. Obviously, we can't, the thing about people that makes us different than other animals, which we accept as being controllable, you can train dogs, we can't train cats, but you can train animals, you can control animals to a certain extent. The reason we're so much less controllable is because we are smart enough to be able to see when we're being controlled. And that's something that I think develops pretty early in the game. Kids can figure out when that's happening. People know when they're being jerked around, and they can take steps, or will take steps sometimes, to not be jerked around. Okay, the next thing is, in this theory, we are not just one big control system. The diagram of a control system makes it seem like we are, that all we do is control one thing and we do it with one action. In fact, we are controlling a gazillion things at the same time. Most of them low-level things like our muscle tensions and our balance and things like that, but we're also controlling, like I'm controlling for getting through this talk, and I'm controlling for all kinds of very high-level things, while I'm controlling for my balance and what the words I'm saying and all these different things. So control theory, perceptual control theory, it conceives of the nervous system as a hierarchy of control systems. So we are controlling different kinds of perceptions, many different, but we're controlling many different perceptions, but they are hierarchically related, from very simple ones like the intensity of light on our eyes, which is controlled by the size of our pupils, to things like our role in the world, what we want to be, the meaning of life stuff, very high level things. So we are a hierarchy of control systems, but I guess there is evidence that this is actually the way we work, and I have a sort of a fun demonstration to show a hierarchy of control systems. So let me have you up here again. Okay, now what I would like you to do is put your, let's see, how do I do it? Yes, put your hand face up and keep it straight out. And okay, so don't let me push it down. Okay, yeah, that's it. Okay, now what I'm going to do is, when I push down on your hand like that, that's a signal for you to move your hand down as quickly as possible. Okay, so here we go. Good. Okay, so what I'm showing is that my little push down, the signal, is a disturbance to your system that's keeping your arm straight out, right? So when I push down, the first thing you do is push up, right? But what I want you to do is treat that push as a signal to move your arm down. So I'm pushing your arm down as a signal, but your arm doesn't go down first. And so what's going on is there's a lower level system that's controlling your arm position. And when that lower level system is disturbed, it responds to my push. But when the higher level system that sees the push as a signal, then it moves the arm down. So that little hitch in your response is actually the response of a lower level control system. And it's impossible to get rid of it. But you can try. So that's one little, so here, good. Okay. Pretty good, but it is a little bit. See? So yeah, that's it. Good.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks. All right, so we are a hierarchy of control systems, and there's a lot of evidence that that's true. So this is a complicated diagram that illustrates that hierarchy. Here we have a whole bunch of input, comparator output systems, a whole lot of control systems. These are the control systems at the lowest level of your nervous system. These are the control systems like your tendon reflex system that's keeping, that's controlling the tension on your knee, so that so that you can keep your legs straight despite changes in the terrain and things like that. The next level up are the systems that set the references for that lower level system that are controlling perceptions that require these lower level systems to change, and so on up. Powers came up with some ideas based actually on introspection of what the different kinds of perceptions are that are controlled at each level. So that's what these names are here. So like the lowest level perceptions we control are just perceptions of how much of something there is, intensity. And then the next kind of perceptions are perceptions of combinations of intensities, like the taste of lemonade is a combination of the intensity of different chemicals in a liquid. Transitions are perceptions of movement, changes in the state of sensations. And configurations are patterns of, and so on up to, so it's more and more complicated perceptions that are controlled at each level, and there's a top to this hierarchy, at least currently, as far as we can tell. The highest level perceptions we control, the powers thought they were something called system concepts, which are our perceptions of how we get along in the world with other people, systems of who we are relative to our group. So, but the only reason I present this is to show you that it's these different levels of control systems that are apparently responsible for setting the references of the lower level system. So the question of where do our wants come from? From higher level wants. And where do those come from? So what's interesting though is then that there is a top to this hierarchy, and in the sense that there is a level of you at which you can't change your references anymore. It's the ultimate you. It's the end of your autonomy. And so, and it's those system concepts. It's the sense of yourself, whatever that is, that determines how you set all these other, what principles you'll defend, what programs of action you'll carry out. All those things are dependent on what you have developed as your system concepts. That's why it's so important to try to help people develop what would be good system concepts that would help them set references for other things that would be, so that they'd be nice to other people instead of the way they often are. But it's all happening within you. There's no way to get into this thing to make it any better. You are the one that changes your own light bulb, I'm afraid. Okay, so that's the model of how we work, of how people work. It explains how we are able to control our experiences. It explains why we are sometimes able to get people to do what we want, why it seems like we can control them, because if we can disturb things they care about, we can get them to... and there's a section in the book that explains how you can control other people. If that's what you're into, you can do it. It's also a big part of the book to say that being oriented towards controlling other people is a problem. It's actually, that's kind of the theme of the book, is it's another paradox. Because we are control systems of this sort that have references for the way things should be, among the things we have specifications about the way things should be is how other people should be. You can't help it. There's no way to get around the fact that you want other people to be certain ways. If you can no more stop wanting such things than you can stop wanting to maintain your balance when you want. It's just part of things. And so that creates a problem, because when you do start acting to try to get people to be the way they should be according to your specifications, then it turns out you start to get, it's very likely you will get into a conflict, and that's what I'm going to talk about in a second. In other words, when control systems try to control other control systems, they just end up fighting. So, why do we lose controls? Why do we lose control? These are my 3 reasons why we lose control. Because being in control is what it's all about, and when we lose control, losing control means that we are having a mismatch between what we want and what we're perceiving. That creates error, and error hurts. And the chronic error hurts bad, and ultimately it shows up as psychosis, neurosis, and all those things. But anyway, one cause of loss of control is ignorance. This is actually, it's not so much loss of control. When you're developing, you have to learn to control. Control systems don't come in automatically. So that's why people get educated, get training. You have to learn to control things. And so to the extent that you are ignorant of how to do things, you will not be able to control them as well as you could. So one treatment for loss of control, if it's a loss of control due to a lack of skill, get educated or get trained. Another reason for loss of control is the one I'm familiar with because of my wife's situation, and that's insuperable disturbances. That is, things that happen that you just can't deal with. A hurricane hits, your neighborhood, your house is gone, and there you go. That's a huge difference between what you want to perceive and what should be. And insuperable means there's no thing you can do, at least immediately, to compensate for those kinds of disturbances. The death of a loved one. These create enormous error. Some of these can be treated, in a sense, by preparation. You build your house of bricks instead of straw. But otherwise, I actually did some work for FEMA, where they had a crisis counseling thing where after catastrophes, floods, and hurricanes, you go in and just talk to people. Time does heal these things sometimes, but it's tough. And the third kind of reason for loss of control is the one that I just alluded to, and that's conflict. When you, it turns out that because we are this hierarchy of many different control systems, we often, those systems often want to control the same thing, but relative to different references. So we have internal conflicts. I want to go to the movies, but I have to go visit my sick mother. You can't be in two places at the same time. That's a conflict. So one of those things, that's a conflict. And when you have a conflict, and it doesn't stop, you have error. You have error in the system that wants to go to the movies, you have error in the system that wants to help your mom, and it hurts. And it's a loss of control. You are not able to do, those are two things you want to control, and you can't do it. So a the hierarchy of control systems explains why we have conflict. Conflict is unavoidable. We have conflicts, many conflicts all the time during the day. But sometimes we have chronic, big-time conflicts, and that's when therapy is called for. Oh, I have a demonstration. So one more. So what I want you to do is this is another tracking thing, I want you to follow my finger with your one finger, these two. Okay, so track my two fingers with your one. Oh, you didn't conflict, you were good. Okay, often when I do that kind of demo, when I suddenly separate my fingers, your finger will actually be frozen for a while. It doesn't know whether to go that way or that way. You solve the conflict very quickly, so you're a very, very healthy person. So it's hard to demonstrate conflict because people don't like to be in conflict, and we'll generally resolve them really quick if they can't figure out a way. But persistent conflict is okay. So there's two kinds of conflict. Intrapersonal, the kind where the control systems in conflict are inside you, or interpersonal. That's the kind of conflict that happens when you try to manipulate other people, when you try to control other people without their consent. There actually turns out to be many situations where we allow ourselves to be controlled consensually, because we know we're willing to do that. If you've ever played in a band or an orchestra, somebody's a leader and they say, you do this and you do that. They are controlling you. They're telling you what to do. You are agreeing to it. That's called cooperation. But some people are into arbitrary control or coercive control, and that's when you get into trouble. And that's interpersonal conflict means control between two different people, and that's very hard to resolve because the control systems are two different people, and so even if you are willing to give up, the other person might not. So that's it. Just the last topic here, the last thing. Do we have any time left?
Just enough, maybe 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. The last thing I'll mention is that perceptual control theory does assume that we have a mechanism in us to resolve conflict and to improve our ability to control. It's called a reorganization system, and it's a system in our nervous system that sits outside of our control hierarchy, and when something in this hierarchy goes wrong and there's error, this monitoring system detects it and starts throwing switches, trying to make things better, and when things get better, it stops throwing switches. But this reorganization system is the learning system. It's the system that we assume you are tapping into when you give people therapy. You're trying to get people to reorganize the way they're doing their controlling. But obviously I'm running out of time, so one last slide for the benefit of this group. I believe your group is called now Choice Theory. I just wanted to talk about how controlling and control theory relates to choosing. We often think of choosing as a good thing, but in control theory, when you feel like you're having to make a choice, that's actually a sign that you're in a conflict. When you feel like you have to decide, that's a conflict. What's good is to have options. It's good to have options. In order to be in control, you have to have a lot of possibilities for what you do, because disturbances are unpredictable and you have to be able to possibly do many different things. But a control system doesn't work by choosing what to do. It doesn't make decisions about what to do. The output of a control system that brings your perception where you want, it's completely automatic. Okay? When you're in control, when things are good, when you're floating, when you're in, if you've ever had the experience of really being there and feeling really tight, in a good way, you are not feeling like you have to decide what to do. It's just happening. So choosing is not something that's it's part of controlling. The feeling of choosing or deciding or whatnot is a sign of conflict from a control theory perspective. So that's it. Here's some websites to go to get some more material on perceptual control theory, and so I hope disturbances come that are good and prevail and allow me to get out there to Slovenia, but if not, I hope I'm able to talk to you via this internets. Okay? All right, thanks.